On today's episode, which is sponsored by Moving Pictures and Holtz Bats, we have longtime baseball player, baseball coach, recruiting coordinator, and recruiting director, Wayne Mazzoni. Don't miss this episode. Welcome back to 90 Feet Away. Today I am joined by an incredibly special guest. Not only a guest, a friend of mine for literally almost 35 years, a true friend, someone I admire, someone who's been in this game on every side of this game for so many decades now, and help me welcome Wayne Mazzoni. Wayne, thanks for being with us today.
No, I'm excited to be here. And, I had you on my thing last week, so it's going to be fun to have like the tables turned on this one.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to try and mix it up, from what we did last week. I want to give the audience a little bit of background. Once my playing career was over, I still jonesed to play the game. I still jonesed to compete no matter what it was. And Wayne and I met. We argue about this all the time. I think it was the late 80s. He says it's the early 90s. We played an incredibly difficult, fast-pitch men's softball league in Central Park with some of the best ball players I had ever seen. And that's where Wayne and I first had the honor of meeting each other and playing together. And like I said, it's a long time ago, but I'm just so happy to still maintain this friendship. And obviously through baseball and everything we do together, that's where we first came across each other, Wayne.
I mean, here's the thing. I was thinking about this. The percentage of guys like us that played baseball and been involved in baseball, the percentage of those guys that have had a fast-pitch softball experience is probably under 1%. And I don't think your average person, because when you say softball to someone our age, it's with a beer in a hand and the ball in an arc. And that's not what the league that we played in. And you said this on my podcast last week. I'll say it back. I was kind of awful. Like, I could play the field, but man, hitting was a whole different thing when that close, at the way these guys were throwing. Boy, that was a learning experience.
So for the audience that doesn't know what we're talking about, in the 80s, 90s, even into the 2000s, it was called slingshot pitching, right? Slingshot. You had grown men showing up, throwing as hard as they could from 46 feet away. Not only fastballs, rise balls, drops, changes, curves, screws. I mean, in, out, up, down. And they talk about the reaction time of a baseball player picking up 94 or 95 plus. I will tell you, this was a lot more difficult. Do you agree, Wayne?
Not only that, not only the speed, but I do remember like going, all right, my number one job is not to strike out in softball here, right? So then you'd make contact, but boy, that ball does not go like a baseball goes when you connect with it. So I made a lot of soft outs in softball, I'll tell you that much.
And what I talked about last week on your show was, I was a pretty good ball player. I couldn't break our infield, right? There were like double and triple A guys
legit
playing fast pitch men's softball in Central Park. And it was, to this day, the best softball I've ever played with a great bunch of guys. So that's where our friendship started. And I want to go back. I need to know about Wayne Mazzoni as a kid. I need to know about Wayne Mazzoni on Long Island. I need to know how Wayne Mazzoni became the Bo Jackson, the Deion Sanders of Gettysburg College. Tell me about your childhood, Wayne. Like how good were you in baseball? How good were you in football? And what led you to Gettysburg?
That's a really good question. So like most kids, I'm 54. So when my youth was self-directed baseball and sports, I mean, stickball if you ask me what the number one thing I did with my childhood is play stickball. We'd go to a school, we'd burn the hair off a tennis ball, we'd have the bats, a couple of jugs of water, crank some tunes, and we were there 6 hours, throwing our arms out. But you really learned how to make contact. You learned a lot. But we played all kinds of sports, and football and baseball, I realized I was pretty good at, and a lot of the sports I wasn't good at. Like, I still am the world's worst basketball player of all time. But football, baseball, I was pretty good, and I would say I was above average. I was a captain both sports in high school. I was a really good player. Didn't have a clue about what recruiting was, and I don't even know, to be honest, if there was recruiting back then. Certainly nothing like it is now. Like, I'm sure if I threw 93, word would have gotten out to your Clemsons and your Florida States, but I was good, but not that good. I was probably a low 80s lefty and a good football player, but a D3 level. And I kind of found my way to Gettysburg, where I said, hey, this is a place I could play both sports. So I recruited them. They didn't recruit me, that's for sure.
So how did that work, Wayne? Like, again, you're a kid from Long Island. I mean, other than the Civil War, how do you find Gettysburg? Like, I didn't know about their college when, I was 18. How did you find it?
Great question. I kind of give the credit to my dad, where it's just like a couple of weekends, we just said, hey, let's start driving and go look at a bunch of schools. So interestingly enough, I went to a big high school. My high school had about 2,500 students, and I liked that environment. So we sort of said, hey, let's find a college that's a smaller college that would have that same feel. So I didn't want to go to a massive school. So we hit a lot of those, Pennsylvania's got a gazillion schools. So we hit all the Franklin Marshalls and Gettysburg and Dickinson and Ursinus, all these places. And we just drove around. And then after that first visit, and I started to make some applications, and wherever I got accepted, I then went back for like an accepted thing. And I just felt comfortable there with a variety of things. I don't really remember why. It was 1987, but I will say I made the right call. And I still, in fact, on, later, actually early June, there's like a golf outing for one of our fraternity brothers that passed, and there's an alumni weekend, and it's like the group is still together, which is great.
Which is unbelievable. But did either coach, baseball or football, kind of get to see you before you were on campus? So you just, I mean, Division III, as we know, there's no money. You're not getting money to play. But they were both interested in meeting Wayne Mazzoni. Is that kind of how it went? Or you just showed up, accepted, and said, I'm here to try out for both teams?
It's a really good question. I think with football, you had some film back then. So I would send in some film, and I remember just saying, hey, listen, you fit the profile of what we have. We're happy to have you. Like, it wasn't recruiting. You have a spot in the team. The baseball coach, who was actually the football coach at the time, never knew a thing about me. So I say this all the time, and it's so true. Think about your modern high school baseball player now. They have 100 at least coaches see them before they get to college. The first time a college coach ever saw me play, I was in college. So, I mean, it's totally, completely changed the process, and, college sports at every level, even D3 schools, they're recruiting heavy now. They recruit like D1s, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, do you make it 4 years in both baseball and football? No. So
No.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. My plan was to do 4 of both, right? So I get in there as a freshman playing football, played the whole year in football, and basically said, forget doing 2. Like, I'm getting my butt kicked in football. I'm really not that good compared. Like, here I was, a really good high school player. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I ran the scout team, and still laugh at all the things we had to do as college football scout team players. And then I was so beat up, really. Like, I didn't even play baseball my freshman year. So my first year in college, I only played football. And then sophomore, junior, senior year, only played baseball, which I had a great baseball experience. I definitely regret, however many years later, 30 plus, that I didn't stick with football, because I saw the guys that stuck it out, even though they were just playing football. They were the same as me as freshmen. And by juniors, they were, starters and captains of their senior year. So I definitely would have had a role. It just looked like too big of a chunk to bite off to play these, 2 sports. So,
well, but too big of a chunk. There was once a really good friend of mine named Wayne Mazzoni, who said to me in the first go round with my older son, Jordan, who you were very helpful with, that there were three things, right? There's athletics, academics, and a social life. Pick two of them because you can't do all three of them very well. Now you add on a second sport, you're really getting your ass kicked all year round. Is that part of the reason, Wayne? Like you also wanted to enjoy some of the college experience, or it was just too much on you to be able to stay organized and do your thing?
It's an excellent question. I think the answer is I was in a fraternity and I was having fun, and I didn't want to be in two sports and miss out on everything. You missed out enough by being in one sport. So probably in the retrospect, I'm like, to grind out two sports, especially to – whereas baseball I played right away, football would have been like I wouldn't have played for a while. And it just, and listen, how many kids right now at any level of college play two sports? It's very, very, very few. And if they do, it's maybe at a school like a NESCAC school where they're very limited in what they can do off season. Now, if you're not kind of year round in the college, you're in trouble.
Oh, no question. I mean, I tell everybody, you can't just pick up a bat 2 weeks before a season and be ready. It just doesn't work. I don't care what sport. Obviously, I use baseball. All right, so we graduate from Gettysburg. Do you immediately know that you want to stay in baseball? Like, do you have any other ideas in your life of other things that you want to do, or you're just, this is my calling, I got to do this, and there's nothing else that I can foresee in my future? Where are we at that point?
Yeah, these are good questions, Z, because I went to college without a big picture plan, and I just had always assumed I'd probably do what my dad did his whole life, which was get on a train on Long Island, commute to the city, do some business job, train back. And the second I graduated, I go, the only thing I know I do not want to do is get on a train, go to city, and commute back, right? So I'm like, I want to work in sports, et cetera. So I do advise kids, if there's kids out there that want to take a gap year, or like whether it's before college or after college, to find yourself, I'm kind of all for that. I never did that, and I think there's merit to that. So my job after this expensive education at Gettysburg was I drove for Domino's Pizza. So that was my gig, driving for Domino's Pizza. And interestingly enough, you may know this story, you may not. Lou LaForgia, who we played fast pitch softball with, who was one of the all-time greats at St. John's, his teammate, Russ Bovee, I wound up becoming friendly with. And Russ helped me get an internship with the Cleveland Indians. So I moved out to Cleveland, and I was like a baseball operations intern. Okay, so this is 1991, out in Cleveland, and within 2 days, I absolutely hated it, because all I was doing was entering data into a computer for just 8 hours a day, nothing to do with baseball, nothing to do. And, again, another thing, impatience is a bad skill of mine, but like, if I would have stuck that out, I probably would have been in the front office of baseball, but I just didn't like it. And all I really wanted to do was get back on the field. So I left that, and on kind of short notice, I wound up getting a coaching job for middle school softball, right? So here I am, 22, 23, no coaching experience, don't really know enough about softball, and coached this middle school girls team, and that was my calling. Like, I absolutely loved it. And from then on, I said, how do I do things in my life to become a coach? And that's kind of what I did for 30 years.
That's one part of, and I want to talk about obviously where you went, and obviously to end up at Sacred Heart for so many years, but that's one part of Wayne Mazzoni. You also need to have an incredible partner in Kel to support what you want to do, because we know, right, you're not making $1 bazillion coaching. And these are decisions, these are conscious decisions that I make, right? Similar to like the Division I baseball players where, it's 1%, 1.5% of any baseball player. How many coaches truly make a living, an a good living coaching baseball, coaching softball. It's only the real big schools. Was that a difficult part of your journey with your wife, and or did she just fall in love with Wayne and say, "Babe, go do your thing"? Like, how did that work?
So that's kind of easy to answer because we didn't meet until April of '99. So I was already established, and this is what I am, and this is what I'm doing. So she kind of knew what the plan was. Now I will say, all along the time, you're right. All the coaching jobs I had, I never had a coaching job that would allow her not to work. Right now, if you in baseball, you got to be at one of the Power Five schools where you make a living enough where your spouse doesn't have to work. So she's been at the same place. She's been a teacher for 24 years, and that hasn't changed even still to this day. When I met her, she's still at the same place. Now that I'm out of coaching, which I'm sure we'll get to, and I'm making a better living and I have more free time, now I'm the one with where she's working harder than I was. Coaching was 7 days a week all year round, and now I don't have that schedule. She's got a much harder schedule than I do now.
I love it. All right, we'll get back to that. So you go from coaching girls softball, and it's your calling. How does that lead to the next opportunity for Wayne Mazzoni?
Yeah, so I didn't really know what the plan was to get into college coaching and how to do it. I didn't have any really mentors in that phase. And again, I'll remind people that watch this, life is different pre-internet, pre-cell phone. It's just harder to reach people. Like, it's just the making connections was harder. So I decided, hey, the best thing I could do is get a master's degree because a lot of the coaching jobs, the coach had a master's. So I applied to the sports management program at St. Thomas University in Miami, and I got a grad assistant coaching job at Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale. So basically for a year, I was down there going to school to get my master's and, coaching college baseball for the first time. So that was my first experience, of which I loved everything about it except the Florida weather. I like the cold. I don't like the heat. And I just remember to this day, like taking a shower in my place in like Miami Lakes, coming out the door and just like sweating head to toe instantly in August. So I just knew I want to coach, but Florida, while it's great for baseball in certain times of the year, I just can't handle the heat.
So you spend a year at Nova, you come home, and is your first, I could be wrong, is your first job at Post?
No. So
No.
Here's an interesting thing. So to finish my master's, I had to do an internship. So I wound up interning for the Buffalo Bisons, who at that time was, a AAA team. I don't know who they're affiliated with now, but I was like a do everything for them. I mean, I threw BP, I filled up the manager's car with gas. I, did a whole bunch of stuff. But what I also did, I kind of remember it like yesterday, now that you asked, there was a big book of like, probably still made. I don't know if it's online now, but it was a book that listed all college athletic programs in the country and then each coach's name and their phone number, right? So I went through this list and I basically sat in like this suite overlooking Buffalo Bison Stadium. And I just I picked out like 50 schools that I think would be a fit, right? And I just called and left a message or called and talked to the coach, rejection, nothing. Finally, Fairfield University, John Slozar answers the phone and he goes, "It's just me. We don't have another coach. I just lost a guy. Are you interested?" So I drove down to Fairfield and interviewed, and boom, right away, starting in the 1993 season, I was the pitching coach at Fairfield U.
Fairfield was D1 at that time?
Yes.
So you get a break. I mean, that's an incredible break at your age to become a Division I pitching coach. That can't happen today, right? Like that's not happening today for a 23-year-old kid.
Not without a Division I. Like if that guy played at Clemson, was an All-American, he might get the gig. But someone with that background I had, no.
Right. So you were lucky to get this.
Yes.
How long do you stay at Fairfield?
So I was there 3 years. I made a whole bunch of money every year. I made $4,000 a year there. So I did a bunch of lessons, and I worked at Jenny Craig as a weight loss counselor.
I need people to hear this, right? Division I pitching coach for the year made $4,000 and had to work at Jenny Craig. Go on. Thank you, Wayne. Go on.
So I spent 3 years doing that, and by the end of the third year, I kind of was a little, nothing. I didn't see the end of the tunnel. Like, hold on, I'm here 3 years. The pay isn't gone up. There's no really chance for advancement. So I basically left coaching, and I spent 2 years doing my own recruiting business, which is kind of what I'm doing now. But it was a totally different animal back then. I had written a book on recruiting, and I said, you know what? I'm going to try the recruiting route and see, what happens there. So I basically spent 2 years before getting back into coaching helping kids with the recruiting process.
So I had no idea about that. Obviously, I know you've written multiple books. You've been on, the radio. You do presentations. You're the best at it that I've ever seen. How were you so forthwith in knowing that this is what kids needed? Was it because of the lack of recruiting that you went through, or is it stuff that you saw at Fairfield? Because dude, I mean, that to understand what was needed and actually make it happen at that point is incredible.
No, you made the point exact. Like, from not having any clue about the recruiting process, playing in college, and then actually recruiting people, I realized that the recruiting process is really, really difficult. So I had seen it as a player, and then I'd seen it as a coach, and I realized everyone is confused. And now it's almost 20 years later. And actually, hold on, let's take that back. That was 96, so 2006. It's almost 30 years later, and the recruiting process is still as confusing.
It's as confusing, but 30 years ago, like you said, lack of internet, I really, I take my hat off to you in really being ahead of the curve, because it's the most difficult. I mean, forget about now with the transfer portal and navigating, what the world has become after COVID, but that's wild. So 2 years doing that, then you said, okay, I got to get back into coaching.
Right. Going to get back into coaching. And that's when I met Kelly, and I said, I got the woman. And I said, I'm going to get back into coaching. So that's when I took the job at Post. And, it's funny to talk about the money. So here I was the head coach at Post, Division II, and that paid $5,000. So I had a huge raise of so now I'm making $5,000 and then doing a bunch of camps and other things on the side to make a living. But, it's running my own program and the whole bit. So I spent, I think, 6 years at Post.
But that probably is what enabled you really to get to what became your ultimate home, right? Sacred Heart?
Well, there was a one step in between. So
Right.
I left Post, and I took a job at Holy Cross. So for the 2006 season, I coached at Holy Cross 1 year.
Correct.
And then went to Sacred Heart. Interestingly enough, about Holy Cross, one of the pitchers on the team, I was the pitching coach, is Matt Blake. Matt Blake is now the pitching coach for the Yankees.
For the Yankees, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Why only 1 year at Holy Cross? What did you like or not like about Holy Cross?
All right. This is fun. I don't talk about this people a lot. So I basically realized that Post, while it was great being in charge, just very lack of resources. And I said, I really got to get back to Division I to try to coach the right way. Here was an opportunity. Now the job at Holy Cross, that paid $1,000. So, and my whole point was, hey, I'll take the job there. I'll do such a great job. They'll see how good I am, and they'll pay me what I'm worth. I realized that wasn't going to happen, and I don't want to talk badly about Holy Cross because I think it's come a long way, but they had this unbelievable field, but it really wasn't built by the university. It was built by an independent team, and it makes you think they really care about baseball, but maybe they do now, but they certainly didn't then. And then I was still living in the same place. All the while I was coaching at Post, and at Holy Cross, I was still living in the same house I am actually doing this right now. And then I said, I just want to be closer to home. And then I took the job at Sacred Heart in fall of 2006 and stayed there for 16 years.
So you're commuting back and forth to Holy Cross from Connecticut.
Yeah, that was fun.
For $1,000, which probably cost you $4,000 in gas, hoping to get to the next level. And how how do you get to Sacred Heart, Wayne? I mean, again, was it now I'm making a name for myself? People kind of know who I am. I'm coming home, right? I mean, it's down the street from your house. I mean, not exactly, but it's pretty close to your house. How did the stars and the moon align to make that happen?
Yeah, so that's another interesting one. So it actually really happened at the Mohegan Sun Coaches Convention. So I'm there and was friendly with the Sacred Heart guys. I'd actually played their JV team when I was coaching at Post, and a guy named Seth Kaplan, who's now the head coach at Westfield State. He said, "Hey, we've lost a guy. Would you be interested in coming in and helping?" And that was actually coming off a year where they won the conference and went to the Georgia regional. So I started there, and interestingly enough, I was the volunteer. So the rules at that time were, 3 paid coaches and a volunteer. So here it is, whatever age I am, married, and I'm now the volunteer coach, not getting paid by the university at all at Sacred Heart. And again, always doing my side stuff, my speeches, my camps, all these different things to make a living. And that's kind of how it came about. And then I gradually moved up at Sacred Heart.
I was going to say, how long did that take for you to become the pitching coach at Sacred Heart?
So
how many years?
Here's the interesting part. I was the volunteer the first year, but I was the pitching coach. So I was a pitching coach, but you're still the volunteer, not paid.
Wow.
Right after that, a guy left. I started making a little money. I was really there for quite a while, making only a little money, getting bumped slightly up. And then in 2017, then I got the full-time, assistant job, and basically started, I was still doing my stuff on the side, but it was now the first time that I really had a proper paying full-time job in coaching.
But in that, they're also expecting more, right? Like, I'm not only the pitching coach, I'm also doing the recruiting. I mean, you were doing a lot of different things for Sacred Heart, weren't you?
Oh, I mean, I was doing recruiting even when I was the rules said you couldn't recruit as a volunteer, but I was still running camps. And you run camps, and we would get a third of our players in these camps that I would run. So I was still doing, and the rules that would allow you to still make phone calls with kids and bring them around campus. I just couldn't go out to random tournaments, at least for that 1 year as a volunteer. But, the recruiting piece was a huge part of the job.
Being at Sacred Heart, I always had this question, which has changed, I think, now or within the last 2 years. What was it like to recruit there without having your own baseball field?
So there's a lot of things that changed over the time and even still now. So when I first started there, the home field was Harbor Yard, where the Bridgeport Bluefish played, right? So it was not a great situation. We didn't practice there. We were like second-class citizens, but it was a great ballpark. We had a nice banner. So when you took a recruit over there or you brought a recruit to the game, they thought we were pretty big time because we had this nice place, right? In 2017, Harbor Yard basically says we're going out of business. That place is actually a tremendous concert venue now by Live Nation. But for 1 year at Sacred Heart, we played all on the road, which was brutal. A season on the road, no home games. And then we took over a Bridgeport town field and put in blood, sweat, and tears to make this a decent field. So the whole time I was there, which is still the case now, they play at this field. Now the school has announced they've purchased or merged with Notre Dame High School across the street. And whenever it's going to happen, hopefully soon for them, they're going to build a joint field for the high school and the college, which should be a legitimate, nice turf field for the program, and they deserve it.
Oh, no question. I mean, I always wondered what that was like because, again, similar to like another local program like Iona, right? Like Iona just purchased Concordia's old field, which I don't know if you're familiar with the Concordia field.
Yes.
It blows me away that there's still a
hill
in the outfield. But, one of the things I think kids are so impressed by are, hey, what are the facilities? What do I got here? So I always wondered what that was like to get a kid on campus and be like, yeah, we really want you here. But yeah, let's go to that middle school, go check out where you're going to be playing. So that couldn't have been easy.
No. So here's the thing. You bring up a great point, and this is a lesson as a recruiter. Forget the recruiting process. If you had a kid with viable options, if the kid was looking at UConn and the kid was looking at Boston College, and you got him on campus and you drove to the field, you weren't going to get him. I mean, it's just very simple. But there's a lot of good ball players that are overlooked and they just want to be wanted, and no one else is showing interest, and they don't care if you're playing on concrete. They want to play D1 ball, and they're committed to the process. So I think you have to do a little extra work, and it can be frustrating when someone says no because of the field, but you started to learn, hey, what's the right kid that we're going to bring here? And that's not going to be his deciding factor, is what the field looks like. Because if it is, you're not going to get him.
Understood, and thank you for clarifying. I think I know the answer because I feel like I know you pretty well. Why do you coach, Wayne? Why do you love what you do? What motivates you at 54 to continue to do what you do and help kids?
It's kind of a big picture view of, we're accidentally lucky to get a life, right? I mean, I don't know if there's anywhere else that there's other planets people are doing podcasts and getting to go on vacation and go out to dinner. So we get this life with an expiration date, soon enough, Holtzy and me, we ain't going to be around here anymore, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to try to help people. I mean, when you get selfish, as we all do sometimes, you generally aren't happy, you know what I mean? But when you help others, it makes you happy. So I always kind of coached baseball. I loved baseball and still do, but it was the vehicle to help kids grow and mature and figure out life and deal with issues. And, I enjoyed just as much helping the lowest player on the team or the kid that had problems off the field. And I didn't try to quote unquote counsel them. If somebody had a legitimate counseling issue, we had counseling people but most of the time kids have other issues. And then even an enjoyable part for me was, and still is, after college, when they get out and they're struggling because they have this job they don't like or they don't know what to do, I find that to be an enjoyable time to help these kids. And one of the things I always enjoyed doing, at all the places I coached, was I'd take guys for hikes. I would go take the groups of pitchers into the woods, and we'd sit by a waterfall, and I'd lead a meditation and whatnot. And some of them liked it, and some of them thought it was stupid. And then the kids that thought it was stupid, 5 years later, they go, I meditate all the time now by a waterfall. Thank you. So it's that kind of stuff. Just, I think why most people coach is you enjoy helping people.
So I knew the answer. I wanted to hear it. The relationships, helping them through and navigating through life. Like, our vehicle is the baseball field. Our vehicle is doing lessons. But the truth is, in the navigation and overcoming adversity, tragedy, self-doubt, to me, it is what attracted me originally. It's what keeps me doing this now at almost 60 years old. I've told my wife that no matter what I do, when I finally grow up, I will never walk away from doing this, just because that's the part that I cherish more than anything. And the morning of your podcast, I like, you had just gotten back, you were still a little sweaty. You hit 1,000 ground balls to Zack, who had been released from the Mets and was then signed by the Red Sox. I think yesterday was just traded to the Angels. It's not like you're out of my life. Like, these kids remain, and then you end up going to weddings and bar mitzvahs because you have been a mentor to these people. So I think that's why I do it, and I had a really good feeling that's why you did it, and I'm glad we share that as well. The next place I want to go with you, Wayne, for 15 or 16 years, you're the pitching coach, recruiting coordinator for Sacred Heart University, and we get locked in. We get sucked into, this crazy schedule. I'm away from my wife. I'm away from my boys. My boys are playing high school ball. I'm missing their games because this is my job. And then one day that's over. And we worry about what may happen when that day comes that it's over. But for me, looking at from the outside in, Wayne Mazzoni has never looked happier than you are now. And am I accurate?
So this is an interesting thing. So the guy I was working for got let go at Sacred Heart. I was the interim head coach, and I really, really wanted the job. But at the same time that I wanted the job, I had all these plans of all the work that had to be done to make this a legitimate program, right? Like a stressful, like fundraising, facilities, uniforms, academic, like an overwhelming amount of things, right? And I had so much support from players and parents and letters and all kinds of stuff. And for whatever reason, I didn't get the job. I think probably part of it my fault that some people in the administration there, I rubbed the wrong way, probably because I had a lot of outside business interests that they probably saw conflicted with Sacred Heart, which I understand, but I don't regret because you have to make a living, right? So really, when I didn't get that job, I was really bummed. And still to this day, there's a good part of me that misses everything we just talked about, the relationships, although I still get that fill working with kids in many ways. You're so entrenched in coaching, you don't realize there is actually another way to get through the world, right? So I loved every part of coaching. The thing I hated was I have other interests. I like hiking. I like music. I like my friends. I like my dog. And when you're coaching 7 days a week, which is obviously all season, which is in the fall, and which is all summer recruiting, you're really left with the dead of winter as your spare time. So now the fact that I'm doing my own business, recruiting full time, which is a better income, but more than that, it provides freedom. It provides freedom. And I have to tell you, at this stage of my life, nothing could ever get me back into that grind of coaching because it's just too much. Now, maybe like a high school gig that wouldn't be overwhelming, but and I've talked to a lot of coaches, and especially Division I coaches. It's a stressful job, man. There's a lot of, and I'm not going to name names, but I have 3 guys that I know that got new Division I coaching jobs. And they've written to me and text like, I am miserable right now. I'm overwhelmed. This isn't good. And then yet I'll talk to some Division III coaches and they're like, yeah, life is pretty good. Now they work hard, but it's just by nature not as crazy intense. So I don't know, maybe the level I played at Gettysburg, maybe I should have picked that right away, or, or gone to a prep school where I could coach football, baseball, and be at some private school with my dog following me around campus all day. But you get into it, like you said, you're locked in, you don't see another way to make a living. And now that I'm out of it, boy, I love what I'm doing now. Love it.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, you had to have missed a bunch of your kids' stuff, right? Like I know that was part of my motivation, Wayne, in walking away from the manufacturing and the clothing that I did for 20 some years. Because I'd be in China for 3 weeks at a time, and I'd miss Jordan's birthday or Sydney's, softball tournaments. And, it killed me to be away from that stuff. And, that stuff doesn't last forever either, right? And one day it's all over. And I think, seeing you being able to do this stuff, because, again, you're not working. You're still working very hard, but you're working hard on your time, when you want. You're setting up your hours for phone calls and Zoom calls and whatever, and then still getting your hikes in with your new dog. I didn't think you'd ever get a new dog, by the way.
It's tough.
But no, believe me, I'm almost there with mine now. But 54 years old, like, other than happiness, what more is important at this time of your life? But you're still impacting kids. You're still working with kids. You're still being interviewed. You're still doing the recruiting business, and doing your lessons and helping kids with their mechanics and overcoming adversity. You're just doing it differently and doing it on your time. I have to ask, because I hope you don't think less of me. What is your obsession with the Dave Matthews Band? I don't know that I could name a song. I probably know 20 of their songs, but you're like a groupie, dude.
So I don't know how much you want to get sidetracked on this, because this is since 1995 in the back of Doug Deering's car in Newport, Rhode Island, when I first heard ants marching. I've been obsessed with the band. I've been to countless shows, and the members, fans are always like comparing shows. I don't know, at least 150 shows, maybe more. My wife and I went to Europe in April to see him in Amsterdam and Germany. Tonight, Friday night, I'm going to see a Dave Matthews tribute band at my local place. I've got a Dave Matthews tattoo. I'm going to the Gorge in Washington, camping out by myself. I mean, there'll be thousands of people, but I'm flying alone to go out there. It's obviously the music, but let me just go briefly into it. The band is a great mix of black and white. It's a mix of rock and jazz. The band plays for just the love of music. And it's funny because I saw another band recently who was really good. And like the band faced the audience the whole time, which you might expect. When the Dave Matthews Band is playing, they like look at each other. They're almost like playing for the love of the music in each other. And the audience happens to be able to watch their intimacy. So it's funny how they do that, where they like solo with each other as opposed to just at the front of the stage, look at me. They're playing with each other. So the music's great. If you really read the lyrics, Dave lost his father early. His sister was killed by the husband, murder-suicide. So he's had a lot of death, and he writes a lot about really just enjoying life while you have this opportunity to live it. And I lost a brother when I was in high school, and that resonates with me as well. So like, it's the music, it's the intimacy of the band, it's a live show. So if you hear them on the radio, you'd be like, it's all right. You go to one of these live shows, and most people who go kind of get it and they're hooked.
Got it. Okay. Is he a local guy? Isn't he from around here?
So, born in South Africa, but his dad, yes, born in South Africa, but his father was a professor, so he would move around. So he actually lived in Westchester for a while in, oh my God, what's that town?
Yorktown.
Yorktown, yes. And then he was also lived in Charlottesville. So the band kind of grew up in Charlottesville,
Okay.
And now Dave lives in Charlottesville and Seattle. But yeah, he's South African by birth.
Interesting. All right, I'll X out of Dave Matthews. I just needed to know for myself. Okay, let's go to recruiting. 2024 recruiting. Has it ever been crazier? COVID, the portal. Guys have 6 years of eligibility. I got recruited to play D1. I get there. There's 4 guys in front of me. I'm now going to go to another program. I'm going from D1 to D3. What's your world like today from the normal part of recruiting and then dealing with the portal after COVID?
Okay, so let's start with the normal part of recruiting. And the reason there are people like me that help kids with the process is for this simple reason. There is almost 500,000 high school age baseball players in the country. There's thousands of teams, thousands of tournaments, all kinds of numbers of kids. And yet at each school, there's only 3 or 4 coaches doing the recruiting. So if you expect these 3 or 4 coaches to navigate all the kids out there and find the right kids for them, it's going to be overwhelming. So the reality is, what I try to do is help a kid based on his grades, his college interests, and his baseball skill to say, hey, these are the right schools for you. Let's present you to the colleges, and then let the college decide if they like you or not. I never tell anyone, I guarantee I'll get you recruited by Fairfield U. I have no idea what they need. If they like you, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But what I do say is, I will get the coaches there to look at you and then give me honest feedback. Either, yes, they like you, no, you're not good enough, or maybe if you run better, throw a better curveball, what is the reason that maybe they want to see you get better? And I'm just like the intermediary, and I think the college coaches trust me since they know I did it a long time, and I know these guys at Friends, and I try to help sort through that, because I think most high school kids and parents don't know where they stack up, what the right places are for their kids, so they rely on others to help them, and then they look for camps that look interesting, and they go to them, but that's a whole crapshoot too. So and it's not just baseball. I think all the sports are very difficult to connect the two sides, to get the coaches with the right kids. This is really hard, man.
Do you get an opportunity, you, Wayne Mazzoni, to evaluate those players yourself before they sign on with you as a recruiter?
So almost all the time, yes. So ideally in person. So most of my clients are in the area where I can get together and work them out in person because I want to work them out my way. I don't think you could just tell how a kid can hit from front toss. So I like to throw BP and throw legitimate at-bats, and then I want to see them throw a bullpen and take ground balls and work them out. If not, I try to get a ton of video. I ask them to shoot video the way I want it for an evaluation, and then I'll talk to their coaches. And then sometimes I'll say, hey, what events have you been to? Who has seen you so far? And then I'll call that college coach and say, hey, this kid came to your camp. What notes do you have on him? So I try to do a full thing. And then every day, this time of year, I go out and watch games. So I'm watching games all the times of kids that I'm working with just to see them perform in games, because you know this as well as I do. We've learned in modern baseball, just because you got this exit velo, just because you throw this velocity, whatnot, doesn't mean you're a really, really good baseball player. And I think we're seeing that more than ever before. You know, how obviously you just have to produce, and kids get sidetracked by saying, well, I hit 107 off the tee. Great. Can you hit a slider at 82 down and away in crunch time? That's what ultimately we need to find out.
My biggest issue, Wayne, I'm gonna step out and say that the only reason people could tell you they don't like Eric Holtz is because I am 100% honest with people. We ask our kids to do the same thing. They come in early spring, bring your grades, bring me a list of schools you're interested in. I want to know so that I can start the process. If a local kid who's 3 in their depth chart on the mound comes in with a list like Georgia, LSU, Miami, I laugh them out of my office because these people have no idea. They just truly have no idea. And I understand it. Like, as a mother, father, you're supposed to love your kid. You're supposed to support your kid. But it takes guys being real by explaining the 500,000 high school players, and that you're only 3 on the depth chart of a B or A level school in a Northeast Mid-Atlantic state that's not even really looked at as much as the Southern Western states. That's probably my biggest or my toughest job, is being honest with people, because every kid thinks they're going to be from our area, Aaron Sabato, who's a special kid, UNC first round draft. They're not out there. And one of the toughest things locally in our area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, there are enough really great schools in our area. You mentioned Sacred Heart, Fairfield. Let's go Quinnipiac, St. John's, Stony Brook, Hofstra, Iona, Manhattan, just at the D1 level. If you live here and you play here and those schools don't know who you are, why do you feel you need to go to Georgia to go play in a perfect game tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I could answer that one too, but.
Well, everybody wants to wear the perfect game gear and the hats, but how many of our guys from this area are getting signed to go play SEC baseball or ACC baseball?
Very few. Very, very few. And here's the thing I was going to say is that baseball is interesting in a way in that it's tough to know how good somebody is, especially for a parent. Like, if you play hoops and you're not very good, it's going to become pretty obvious you're getting cooked on the court, right? If you play football and you're not very good, you don't get on the field, or if you do, you get run over a lot, right? You got problems. But you could be the right fielder on a baseball team and like get 2 balls hit to you during a game, walk once, pop out, get a single, and like your parents like, oh, you had a good day. Well, I don't know. is he any good? Who knows still? You know what I mean? Who knows? So I think you could skirt through a little more in baseball that it's hard for parents to judge, and you nailed it. The parents compare their kids to the team they're on and they don't see the bigger picture. So that's another thing. When I work with somebody, I always tell them, listen, if we don't agree at the talent level, if I think you're a Division III ball player, which is no slight, and you think you're only going to play in the, the Big Ten, like, let's not start. This is not going to work. And, I had another kid that was ultimately a success story, and I'm not going to give his name, but here's exactly how the whole thing went. They gave me a list of 10 schools, all Division I, where there was some interest, right? The kid had some legitimate interest. After they hired me, within 2 days, I'd gotten all 10 of those schools to tell me he's not good enough, they're not interested. So he was so bummed. The mom was like, why did I hire you? I thought you were going to help us with these schools. And I go, I did. I cut through the BS. You thought they were interested. They didn't fully reject you, but they told me this isn't going to happen. So let's stop wasting our time with these schools and let's move on. And the kid is playing in the NESCAC, got a commitment to play Division III at an unbelievable place where he's going to actually be needed, wanted, and play. That's a success story to me.
You just hit the nail on the head. Wayne, where am I wanted? Where am I going to have an opportunity to compete? Competitors have to compete. If I'm going to go to school and maybe get 8 to 10 at-bats my freshman and sophomore year, how am I going to be ready for junior year? I need to go somewhere where I'm going to continue to develop. I'm going to win, I'm going to lose, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to fail. Kids fall in love with the idea of being a D1 ball player, wearing the cool gear and the shorts and the really cool drip. Give me the kid that goes to D3 and has an opportunity to compete for a job as a freshman, or a kid that doesn't buy into that horse shit and wants to go to a JUCO. So let me develop for 2 years in and out of the classroom, on and off the baseball field, and then maybe transfer and see where that might lead me. To me, that is so much more sexy and smart, but people don't understand that, do they?
Well, here's the other thing with that, and this is the biggest thing going now. College baseball is as old and as good as it's ever been. So you'll have a kid say, well, Salve Regina, who wants to play up at Salve Regina? That's D3. People have no idea, because they've never seen Salve Regina, how good they are. Salve Regina has got 6 or 7 guys that throw 90 plus, that have scouts looking at guys that are on their team. They have no idea because they're not educated on the process. Endicott is outside of Boston. Endicott's the #1 ranked team in Division III. You take the lowest 15 Division I programs in the country, Endicott will kick their butt in any game. So people just don't really know how good it is. And then here's the other part that you alluded to before, and this is almost like me preaching to anyone listening. People are always trying to figure out, well, how many catchers do they have and how many outfielders do they have? So I'll go there and I'll have a spot to compete in the outfield. No longer is anything guaranteed at any college with the transfer portal. The bottom line is you have to grind it, and you have to have good habits, and you have to go there and expect that every year, even if you are the starter as a freshman, someone's going to come in and replace you, and you got to constantly work. So I see a lot of kids now that are in college that want to leave because they're not getting playing time. And my answer is, how about just grinding it out, man? Let's work harder. And if you are at a college and you're not having any success, who's going to want you? I mean, who wants a kid to transfer in that went to Quinnipiac and got 3 at-bats his freshman year? They'd rather take somebody else with a proven track record than some. So bottom line is, and this is why you and I connect, and I love all your quotes and all your stuff. It's like you're just basically trying to teach people, you know what? You got to just work, man. You got to work, because you know what? That'll help you now. That'll help you in college. That'll help you when you're a parent, a homeowner, a business owner, an employee. You just got to work, man.
You know what, Wayne? It's funny. Like, yes, fight or flight. And because I don't allow flight, I have to figure out how to fight and how to get around things. You know what? There may be a temporary roadblock. I'm going to figure that out. That's a whole other level of parents in 2024 don't allow children to fail. They want them to have the smooth, journey. For me, not everybody's journey is straight as an arrow, right? This stuff that's curvy, we got to figure it out and be able to navigate that. What is next for Wayne Mazzoni? Like, where do we go? Or are we just like happy living in the moment? I'm happy where I'm at. Where are we going from here?
So let me just make one comment about that last topic before I answer that. I did a great podcast with Butch Thompson. If people don't know Butch Thompson, he is one of the best human beings and baseball guys on the planet. He's the head coach at Auburn. And he said, one thing I've learned over my years as a college coach is kids can get better. So in other words, you have a kid as a freshman who just isn't, you don't see him contributing. You have no idea what that kid's makeup is. And as that kid lifts and trains and develops, that kid might come back in 18 months and have scouts there and be your 3-hitter. So I think that message that he's looking at as players, not as fixed people, but as changing all the time, I think that's a great message for the kids doing that. As far as me, really what I'm doing is, because I have my professional life really figured out and I'm really making an impact and I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, I'm trying to do things that are put me in nature. So like next week, my son coming home from college, we're going with the dog up to Acadia National Park in Maine for 3-4 days. And then in June, we're going to take another 3-4 days with my other son. We're all going to go to New Hampshire. Like, I just like being in nature. We're going to Switzerland. It's not that life is about vacation, but like getting to go do those things in nature is really where I find joy. And I'm really kind of, tapped into all that stuff. And I think in the modern world, we've all gotten ourselves so busy, so stressed. And when somebody's sitting by a beach or hiking in nature or whatever they're into, it's such a joy. So I'm trying to have more of those things in my life.
So now that I have a new knee and a new hip, what does it take to get an invitation on, maybe not Acadia National Park, but I mean, I love the outdoors, Wayne. I love dogs. I mean, can we make that happen? Can we do a hike together?
Let's do this. So this happened maybe 2 months ago. My wife called up when she got to work. So she works in South Salem as a teacher, right? She goes, "Oh my God, I forgot my laptop. Like, I'm dead." And I go, "Hey, I have time to bring it to you." So the dog and I drove to the school, dropped her laptop off, and we went to Pound Ridge Reservation. Dude, let's meet there. I don't know. Is your dog too old to take a hike, or?
Dog is too old, but this dog is not too old. I'd be good to go.
Me, you, and my dog. Dude, let's do it. Because it doesn't have to be. That's the whole point, too, is it doesn't have to be these grand adventures. It could be, it could be anywhere. And I'd go meet you there, and then I'll let you buy me lunch after the hike and all that,
Perfect. I mean, any day in nature, I'm with you, Wayne. Like, I am happiest in the woods. I'm happiest just kind of like recharging my batteries and
Amen.
Yeah. And I didn't understand that, kind of like growing up in the Bronx and like, just the crazy rat race, but there's nowhere I am happier than when I'm doing that. I want to thank you for being here today. Nothing but love, Wayne. Obviously 30 years of respect and friendship and love. I wish you continued success in your journey. I'm probably going to have to go home and, maybe Google a Dave Matthews soundtrack so I can try to figure out the obsession.
I'll send you some stuff.
All right, send me some stuff because, like, I mean, I have my kids' names tattooed on me. I don't have a rock group. There's got to be something there. I'm going to figure it out.
I have the Dave Matthews thing, but then I also have symbols for my kids and my wife and my dog on there. So I didn't just get Dave Matthews. I put some family stuff in there, too.
Thanks for clearing that up. I was a little worried for a second. But again, thanks for being here, audience. I hope you enjoyed this. If you need someone to help with recruiting, Wayne Mazzoni, Division I recruiting, WayneMazzoni.com. He's a great guy. He's your guy. Reach out to me if you don't know how to get a hold of him, and we can put you in touch. Wayne, thank you.
It was great being here, Eric. And just one thing for you is, again, when we met through softball, and then you spent a long time, doing kind of the clothing business and all that. And then to see you get out of that and actually go to your passion later in life and the impact that you've made, it's a tribute to you. So, I mean, I think you and I are very like-minded for sure. And it was great to be on. And I'm not kidding. I'll send you Dave Matthews stuff. And maybe we'll listen to Dave Matthews as we hike Pound Ridge Reservation.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to hold you to it. Thanks again for being here, kid.
Love you, buddy.
All right. Love you too.